All right, guys, so I'm really excited to bring this lesson to you guys. Now that you've watched the majority of the course, we need to introduce the 90-day sprint. So this is what the next 90 days is going to look like for all of you that are watching this course. This is going to be a three-phase system: understanding, skill development, and target acquired, which we're going to go to in depth what each phase is going to entail. Keep in mind, you should understand everything that I'm talking about on here because you have watched the entire Arbitrage Mastery mini course in its entirety, okay? Some of these things are going to be things that you should remember, things to keep in mind. Some of these are going to be little milestones that you're hitting, and some of these things are going to be action steps that are going to help you go from 0 to your first 10K month on Amazon. The reason I chose the 10K milestone is because once you hit your first 10K in sales, you really understand the business and you really believe that you can make this work and it's actually a reality for you. So we're not stopping at 10K. The goal is just to hit our first 10K month within those 90 days if possible. Some of you guys, because of capital, you might end up a little bit short. That's completely fine. Some of you guys don't have any capital constraints whatsoever and you're going to blow that 10K month completely out of the water by the end of your 90-day sprint. So keep in mind, this is just in general. Some of you guys are going to be much faster than this. Some of you guys may be a little bit slower. It's all going to be dependent on your situation. Let's go over phase 1 to get started. So phase 1 is the understanding phase, and it's going to be phase 1 from day 1 to day 30. This is all assuming that you have already created your Seller Central account, you have already verified that account, and you are good to go. You are ready to start sending inventory in. There is going to be a time frame where you're setting up that account, and that needs to be done before we begin our 90-day sprint. Our 90-day sprint starts from the completion of the course and your Amazon account is verified and ready to go. You can now start sending inventory into the Amazon FBA warehouses. Okay? So the first step is you need to watch 100% of the Wholesale Underground course. I cannot say this enough, guys. Most of my most successful students have all watched the course from beginning to end, sometimes multiple times over, and they've made it work. I get a lot of questions about the course, about when people start implementing, they start asking me all these questions. 95% of the questions that I get, I kid you not, 95% of the questions that I get are all included in the course. Sometimes it's just it's gonna slip your mind, you're not gonna remember, or you're gonna forget, or whatever it may be. But a lot of times it's people just not taking the time to watch the course in its entirety, okay? So you would be answering all of your own questions if you watch the course from beginning to end, and it's gonna help you avoid the trap of implementing before understanding. This is a crucial step in your success. If you go into the course and you just cherry pick lessons and you just bounce around all over, you just take the information that you think is useful, you're gonna miss a lot of information that's mentioned in other lessons. If you're focused on just doing arbitrage, this is the Arbitrage 90-day sprint, then you need to watch the whole course in its entirety as it relates to arbitrage. The only things that you need to take out are the supplier search methods and the supplier contact methods. That's it. Anything that has to do with supplier contact and supplier search, you can just forget it for now, but everything else in the course, you need to watch it, obviously including the Arbitrage mini course. Okay, once that's out of the way, we need to start implementing and using all softwares. Throughout this process of implementing and using all softwares, we're starting to get familiar with Keepa, SellerAmp, and sourcing and what all of that looks like. It's going to be very, very clunky. You're going to be stumbling your way across this. You're going to be frustrated. You're going to be confused. It's a learning curve just like anything else, but we need to start implementing as soon as we finish the course. Very soon after we start implementing, we want to set up a mandatory daily sourcing time. This is already set at this phase. Phase 1, you have set a mandatory daily sourcing amount, which we talked about in Sourcing Flow, daily workflow, the other lesson. You need to watch that as well so you understand what I'm talking about here. So we have set that minimum amount, non-negotiable sourcing time. That is super, super important. If you don't have a daily sourcing time, you're never going to hit your daily spend limit or your weekly spend limit or your monthly spend limit. You're never going to hit any of those things because you're not consistently sourcing. You're also never going to hit any substantial numbers and actually make some decent money if you're not sourcing every single day. It is by far the number one task in your business. You need to be doing it every single day. Okay, as we move along, we're going to start understanding product sourcing. In this earlier phase where we're just implementing, we're starting to set our mandatory sourcing time. We're doing it every single day. In the beginning, like I said, you're going to be stumbling your way across. You're going to forget about cashback. You're going to forget about manufacturing margin. You're going to forget about using your catch-all email, or you're not going to have your catch-all email set up at all. But towards the end of phase one, at the later half of phase one, you're going to start understanding how product sourcing is done. Then, after you start understanding how product sourcing is done, you're going to have some inventory that you have now purchased. Now that you have a better understanding of product sourcing, you're going to come across your first few set of products, or at least your first product. By the end of phase one, you should have purchased some inventory. Ideally, a set of different products, but at bare minimum, at least one that you have found that's profitable and you can send into Amazon. Do not put this off because you're unsure or you're nervous or anything like that. We need to get the ball rolling, because in the implementation phase, we are not going to fully grasp what we're doing until we purchase inventory, we get our hands on it, we create a shipment, we send it in, and we start seeing it sell. If we don't see it sell on Amazon, it's always just going to be theory in our head. And the more we put it off, the more stressed out we're going to get about the process. Your first purchase is going to be scary. Your first shipment is going to take so long to complete and you're going to be frustrated. We need to get past that implementation phase and that understanding phase to really set ourselves up really nicely for phase 2 and 3. Okay, so now that we're starting to purchase inventory, we're looking through a lot of sites, we've sourced hundreds and hundreds of Keepagraphs, we're starting to consider a niche, somewhere that we want to look a little bit deeper into. Maybe it has something to do with the products that we purchased, or maybe it has nothing to do with the products we purchased. We've just looked in a lot of places that we don't want to be. And if that's the case, we're starting to consider a niche. Maybe we want to focus on grocery. Maybe we want to focus on shoes. Maybe we want to focus on toys, whatever it may be. But we're starting to get the idea of the direction that we want to go. And again, you're sending in your first shipment before the end of phase 1. This first shipment, like I briefly touched on, is going to take you a lot of time. It's going to be confusing. You're going to be frustrated. You're going to try to figure out labels and your printer and how do I make a shipping plan? All of these things. You're going to be frustrated. You're going to say, I don't want to do this again. Your first shipment is going to take 10 times longer than your 10th shipment and your 20th and your 30th. But we need to get past that first shipment to start understanding the process that we're going through when it comes to prepping and packing and shipping. Okay, now that we've completed phase 1, understanding, now we can move on to phase 2, which is skill development. By phase 2, we are no longer stumbling our way through product sourcing. We are starting to reach a sourcing flow. We can sit at our computer, set our designated time for how much we're going to source that day, and we can go right into flow. We understand how to manufacture margin. We understand where to look. We understand the methods that we're using. We have a significantly better understanding of how to product source when we're doing online arbitrage. Now, it doesn't mean you're going to be an expert. It just means you're drastically better than week 1. Drastically better. You're no longer stumbling your way through it. It's a lot smoother at this point. Because you're in a sourcing flow, you're finding inventory more frequently. In phase 1, you're going to be like, man, I haven't found any products. I don't think there's any products out here. Amazon's on all these products. I'm gated and everything, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Everybody says the same thing. Once you get into sourcing flow and you understand how to product source, you're going to be finding inventory more frequently. It is all part of the skill development process. So as long as you're developing those skills, it will get easier and easier and easier. Assuming you're sourcing every single day. If you source really hard for week 1 and then you don't source at all, you're never going to get here where you're finding inventory more frequently. You're just going to be one of those people who failed and then says it doesn't work because they couldn't make it work. Okay. So by this point, you have reached sourcing flow. Another thing, if you are not sourcing every single day to develop your skill set, you will not reach sourcing flow. It will always be a stumbling process of product sourcing, because you're not doing it every single day. So now we're finding more inventory frequently, Maybe not every single day, but we're finding inventory more and more frequently. Because we're finding more and more inventory frequently, we are starting to run into different opportunities that we are gated in. So we're going to start considering the ungating process. Some people will go and they will start from day one and they start trying to ungate. That is completely fine, but it's better to just prove the concept and then worry about ungating later. So by this point, we're starting to see a lot of opportunity and we want to start ungating if we can't auto ungate already. Because we have a lot more inventory coming in, we are getting more and more comfortable prepping and packing shipments. It's becoming a much easier process to handle. It's still time consuming, but it's going much easier than your first shipment. Okay, at this point now we're going to start narrowing in on a niche. So if in phase one we started considering grocery and toys, for example, well, we've had experience in those categories. We've tried to source a whole bunch of grocery products. We've tried to source a whole bunch of toy products, and we're going to start narrowing in on a deeper niche. So let's say we are going to focus on grocery primarily and toys, but instead of just looking at grocery as a broad category, we're going to start going into more ethnic foods, for example. So we're going to look at Mexican food products, Thai food products, Indian food products, all of these different ethnic foods that now it's a much narrower niche that we're looking into that not everyone is looking into, and we're finding profitability there. Same thing with toys. Instead of just going for general toys, which everybody does, okay, let's go into board games. Let's see what kind of board games are selling, or card games, or things like of this nature, that it's not just general toys. So you're narrowing in on a niche a little bit more because you're understanding what works, what doesn't work, because you're looking at so many different products by this phase. This is towards the end of phase two. So because you've gone through hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of keeper graphs, you're starting to see, okay, where do I actually want to look? Where am I having a lot of luck? By this point, you should start considering Sellerboard Profit Protector Pro because you have a handful of units already at Amazon, and it doesn't make sense to manually reprice them because it's taking up too much time. Also with Sellerboard, you want to be tracking your profit. So by this point, at the very end, assuming you have a handful of products and it's taking up too much time to manually reprice, you want to get Sellerboard and you want to get Profit Protector Pro. And then we're just putting in the reps. Repetition is strength, and you will not pass the skill development phase if you are not putting in enough reps to really become more advanced when you're doing product research. Okay, that's phase two, skill development. Now let's move into phase three. So phase three is target acquired. So by phase three, the beginning, if you've been sourcing every single day, there is no way that you are not high level when it comes to online arbitrage sourcing. If you've been putting in the work every single day for the last 60 days, you're going to know more about product sourcing and reading keeper graphs than the majority of people who are trying to figure this out. Okay, you're going to know a lot because you've been sourcing every single day. Now you're finding inventory daily. This isn't hopefully I find inventory this week, or hopefully I find inventory today. You're finding inventory every single day. Chances are you might not have enough capital to spend. And that just depends on the amount of capital that you have on hand right now. So we're finding inventory on a daily basis. And we're also starting to see which ones are our top sourcing methods. So if you're having a lot of luck manually sourcing, okay, we're going to stick to manually sourcing, or we're sticking to storefront stocking, or we're sticking to cashback sites, or we're sticking to profitable websites that we're having a lot of luck on. Okay, so you're starting to narrow in on the things that are working. Your niche at this point is pretty clear. Doesn't mean it's set in stone. Doesn't mean you can't look anywhere else. Doesn't mean you can't source shoes, for example, if you're usually sourcing grocery. It just means we have 1 to 3 different categories that we like to go and look into, and we're developing our expertise in those categories. And once you develop an expertise in certain categories, guys, I'm telling you, it is invaluable because you can spot opportunity much faster than anybody else who's just glancing through that category. Okay. Doesn't mean it's set in stone, doesn't mean you can't look anywhere else, but by this point you have a pretty clear niche. You're like, okay, ethnic foods in the grocery category, that's the money maker. I'm making tons of money, barely any competition. Nobody's even looking there because nobody even really knows about those type of foods. So I'm dominating the space. Okay, shoes and apparel. Okay, I'm staying away from Nike, and I'm looking into Puma. I'm looking into Crocs. I'm looking into Cole Hands. I'm looking into boots. I'm looking into all of these things because nobody else is really looking into. So we're starting to clear that niche and find our blue ocean that we want to dominate, okay? By this point, we are doubling down on what's working and we are discarding the rest. If we're just having no luck, if we're trying to just source shoes, for example, and Nikes, we're just getting killed on Nikes, we're going to ditch Nikes. We're going to go look somewhere else. If we're trying to source grocery and we tried to source grocery in every single way and it's not working, okay, time to move on to a different category. Oh, okay, time to move on to different suppliers or different retail websites. If everybody says, oh, we should be sourcing from here, and you're just not having any luck, you got to ditch that website. You got to go source wherever you can. You're starting to double down on what's working and you're discarding the rest. Throughout this entire process, your APS sheet has been growing because you're finding inventory constantly. So it's not a massive APS list, but it's definitely grown, and it's very valuable because then you can just go and look at your ASIN purchase sheet and see which products you are needing to restock, which ones you can't restock, which ones you can possibly get at a better price, but it's now a valuable method of sourcing so that you can go and refer back, and it's growing on a daily basis. And again, at the end of phase 3, we're just putting in as many reps as humanly possible, because without reps, we will not get to our goal of 10K by the 90-day mark. And honestly, we're not going to get to our goal of any revenue amount or profit amount if we're not putting the reps in. The reason it's called target acquired is because by this point, we understand what we're doing, we know which direction we're going, and we know how to get there. We know what our niche is, we know how to product source, we know how to manufacture margin, we know what's working, and we're doubling down on what's working, and we're discarding the rest. Now, there is another section, 90 plus, which we'll cover shortly, but I want you to keep in mind what I didn't put in your 90-day sprint. So if we look at your 90-day sprint, I did not put a prep center. I did not talk about VAs, and I did not talk about adding capital into your business. So the reason I didn't put a prep center is because in the beginning, I believe you should be doing everything yourself. You should be prepping and packing your shipments. You should be sending them off to Amazon yourself. 1, it's going to be faster turnaround. 2, you're going to have more opportunity, especially in the beginning, which I've already covered a lesson about talking about all these things, but I'll briefly cover them. You're going to actually be more profitable because you're not having to consider, oh, I need to consider shipping to my prep center and then shipping to Amazon. I don't need to consider pricing another $1.50, $2, $3 if it's a bundle to make this product profitable. You don't need to take those things into account. So you have a little bit more opportunity, especially when you're not really good at sourcing products yet. It's going to help you find your first product faster if you don't have to worry about a prep center. Also, your learning curve is going to be significantly accelerated because you understand the ins and outs of prepping and packing and just you're hands-on every part of your business. You're super hands-on. You're going to understand the business much faster than somebody who just relies on Amazon solely or somebody who just relies on a prep center. It's going to help you develop. It's going to help you accelerate the learning curve very, very quickly. Another reason is because let's say we're doing our 90-day sprint. Our entire energy, mental energy, should be put towards product sourcing, finding profitable products, sending them into Amazon. If you start considering adding a prep center in phase 1, you're going to be like, oh man, I should add a prep center, but I don't have enough units yet. I haven't even found any inventory. It's going to just waste time. It's just a clever way of procrastinating. It's another distraction that we don't need. Then you're going to consider it in phase 2. Oh, maybe I should add a prep center here and there. Oh, maybe I should do it so I don't have to prep any more shipments. Another distraction. You're just wasting mental energy when you could just be focusing. I just am making the decision that I'm going to do everything for the first 90 days. After the 90 days, I will consider a prep center. So that's my 2 cents on a prep center. I think you need to finish out your 90 days by yourself, doing all of the work, and then you consider a prep center. Add it later on. Now you have inventory. Now you understand what you're doing. Now you know how to find more profitable products so that the prep center is not going to completely eat into your profits. And yes, if you're using a prep center in a tax-free state, it's going to help you save on sales tax as well. But I think you really need to understand what you're doing first, and then it will be even more beneficial down the road. And again, guys, this is in general. If you're in phase 2, you're day 45, day 50, day 60, and you're just killing it, you're just finding products every single day, your whole house is full of inventory, okay, you're the exception. You need to find a prep center to help you offload that if you don't want to do that and if it's taking up way too much time. Now, another thing that I didn't mention is VAs. VAs is something to worry about down the road, not in your first 90 days. The reason for that is because your VA will always be just a fraction of how good you currently are. So a VA should not even be considered in your first 90 days. If you're an A player when it comes to product sourcing, at best, your product sourcer, that's a VA, will be a B player at best. That's how that works. So if you're not an absolute expert at finding inventory all the time, you're the one that's going to need to train them, and you're not going to train them well enough to find products for you. And you shouldn't even be sourcing out product sourcing until the very, very end. I do all my product sourcing myself because that's the most high ROI task that I can do in my business. Lastly, capital. This is completely my opinion. Before you start adding capital through loans, or some people take on investors, or even like high limit credit cards, you need to understand what you're doing. The worst thing that you can do is start off in this business. Let's say you have a really high limit on your credit card and you're just spending tens of thousands of dollars on inventory, and you're not even good at sourcing. You don't even know if you understand what you're doing. You're going to start losing a lot of money, and you're over leveraging yourself when you don't fully grasp how to do product research. So this is something to worry about later on once you're high level when it comes to OA sourcing. So you're not buying dud products. You're not spending $1,000 and having it sit there for 3, 4, 5, 6 months. Okay. So these are things that I left out on purpose for your 90-day sprint. I think you need to worry about phase 1, 2, 3, exactly how I outlined it here. You need to make the decision that for the first 90 days, I'm going to commit to myself that I'm going to do absolutely everything in my business. I'm going to take this very seriously. I'm going to source every single day, and I'm going to hit my first 10K by the end of this 90-day sprint at bare minimum, assuming you have the capital to do so. Remember to source every single day. Remember to watch the entire course as it relates to the arbitrage model. And remember that you need to put the reps in. If you do not put the reps in, you can never acquire the skill set that's necessary to actually build this business into the business that you want.